Hi Booklovers, welcome back to my channel. Today's exciting historical romance themed video is a collaboration with a bunch of other romance booktubers. Each of us, there's me, there's Jess from Peace Love Books, Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life, Jen from The Book Refuge, Lisa from Remarkably Lisa, and Samantha from Books with Samantha. Each of us read some historical romance books that were published in the year that we were born. So I was born in 1996, so I read 3 historical romances that were published in 1996, which means all 3 books that I read are 25 years old, which is crazy to think about. So here's my stack of the 3 books that I chose for this video. I have read other historical romances that were published in 1996, 2 of which are actually all-time favorites of mine. I'll talk about those a little bit after, but this was what I read. It was really interesting reading these. They're not like super old, so nothing, old school or OG for historical romance, but they are these 3 authors' more earlier works, so it was interesting to see what kind of books they were writing in their early author careers. So the authors that I chose to read are my girl, Lisa Kleypas. I also chose Julie Garwood and Kat Martin. 2 of these authors I've read before. I've even read books that were published before 1996 by them, so reading these ones wasn't, anything too out there. The first book that I read was Somewhere I'll Find You by Lisa Kleypas. This is what the beautiful step back looks like. So this was her one release in 1996. This is the first book in her Capitol Theater series, which is a series that's based around this theater and acting main characters. I actually recently, for Historical Romance Readathon, I read a novella in this series. It's called I Will. It's book 2.5 in the series, so I kind of already got a sense of a side character in this first book. Somewhere I'll Find You is actually the book that I'm giving the lowest rating to of the 3 books that I read. I gave it 3 stars. I don't usually give too many books less than 4 stars from Lisa Kleypas, but they are out there, they do exist. We can't all love every single book from our favorite authors, but this one is definitely one of her weaker ones for me. This was an okay read for me. It's about a lady heroine who was disinherited by her father because she decides to choose a career in acting instead of being a lady. Being an actress and being on stage is all that Julia has ever dreamed about, and she's actually fulfilling those dreams by getting a job working for Logan Scott, who is this famous actor, this famous producer. She works for him at Capitol Theater, and she's becoming this really up-and-coming and famous actress. Also, Logan was the side character that I met when I read the novella I Will, and Logan is also the hero of book 2 in the series. But this book itself was pretty interesting because I've never read about a main character in a historical romance who's a celebrity. Julia is extremely talented, and it seems like everyone really wants to witness her on stage. So I've never read a main character like this in a historical romance, at least not one who purposely chose to become famous. What the public doesn't know about Julia, though, is that she is married. She was forced to marry as a child the Marquis of Savage, who was also a child when he married her. So both of them were forced by their parents, by their fathers, to marry each other in order to form some sort of alliance. So even though this marriage wasn't technically legal, they both do consider themselves married, even though they both hate it. They've never seen each other before, at least they think they haven't. They've never consummated this marriage, but Damon has been trying to track down Julia in order to get an annulment because he doesn't want to be married. When they finally do meet in person, she knows that he is her husband because he's the Marquis, but he has no idea that she is his wife because she goes by her acting name, Jessica Wentworth. After a little while, they fall for each other, but I never really understood why. It's the kind of romance where, like, when they admit that they're in love, I was like, wait, what? Already? Now Damon is torn. He is in love with a woman who's not his wife, but is actually his wife, and Julia still can't seem to be able to tell them the truth about who she is to him. If you couldn't tell, it does get a little dramatic here. The story does drag a little bit because of how frustrating Julia is with just running away from all of her problems. I also never really fell in love with either of their characters, so the romance was okay, but I did have a lot of fun with the theater aspect of this book. It was something unique and different for me. It's something that I never really read about in historical romance, and I loved seeing the actual production of these plays at Capitol Theater. Julia was alright if frustrating, but Damon was a very bland hero for a Lisa Kleypas hero. He didn't really make me feel all that much. I mean, yes, he is very possessive. As soon as he meets Julia as Jessica, he wants her, he wants to claim her, even though he can't really offer her anything. He's basically just a marquis who takes care of his estate and money, and I never really got anything else besides that. And I never really saw why she fell in love with Damon at all. At least with her, she's, you know, this really enchanting and gorgeous actress who's very talented, so yes, okay, I can see him falling in love with her. Damon just didn't have anything really special going on for him, so he was very bland. And also, Damon's title is the Marquis of Savage. I don't know if I'm supposed to say Savage or Sauvage, but I couldn't really take that part seriously. There is quite a bit of other woman and other man drama here too. Damon has a mistress early on in the book, and that was just so annoying to read. Julia and her boss Logan are very close, and that gets Damon very jealous. But overall, for an early Lisa Kleypas romance, is definitely not her best. It's a little all over the place. The main characters aren't anything to fall in love with. I am a little surprised by this one though, because I have read some Lisa Kleypas books that were published even earlier than this, in 1996, like Dreaming of You and Love Come to Me. Those were published even before this, and I love those books, so I can't even say that this one isn't great because it's an older release. But I am disappointed by this one because it is Lisa Kleypas and I always expect a lot from her, but hopefully whenever I get to the sequel, the standalone sequel, I'll like that one more. Oh, also, forgot to show that I have 2 editions of this book. Course. This one's the boring purple one, and this is the original one, the first edition with the step back. My second read was by Julie Garwood. I read The Wedding, which is book 2 in her Laird's Fiancé series. This copy that I have is one of many editions of this book, but I like it. It's really pretty. It's simple, but the gold just makes it stand out. There's also some pretty embossing here, though I can't really see if you can tell through the camera. But this one I was excited to read because I recently did a reread of the first book in the series, The Bride. That was the first book that I ever read by Julie Garwood, and I've been meaning to continue with this series, so when I had the chance to read a 1996 book, and this one was it from Julie Garwood, I was so excited. I freaking love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it even more than The Bride, which I gave 4 stars to. This one, I'm not gonna lie, it felt the closest in vibe to The Secret, which is my favorite Julie Garwood book, and that's probably why I loved it so much. It's another medieval Highlander historical romance by Julie Garwood. It's got a forced marriage between a Scottish laird and the bride of his greatest enemy. It's also a bit of a kidnapping romance. It's not the only kidnapping romance that I read for this video, but Connor does kidnap Brenna while she's on her way to marry a man that her father set her up with. These two have actually already met before when Brenna was very, very young. She doesn't remember it though, but he definitely does. It's like the prologue of this book, and it was so freaking adorable. But now she's all grown up and she's kind of in the middle of Connor getting revenge against his greatest enemy, who was the man that he believes killed his father. So he takes Brenna for himself. He forces her to marry him, and I don't know what it is about Julie Garwood and her wedding scenes, but they are all so freaking hilarious. The wedding scene in The Wedding was so freaking funny. It's a new favorite scene of mine from Julie Garwood. It was just ridiculous and I couldn't stop laughing while I read it. So now Connor and Brenna are married and she is forced to go with Connor all the way back to Scotland so she can be a laird's wife. I loved Brenna. I always love Julie Garwood's heroines. She is a bit of a dork. She is very clueless about a lot of things, but she can be sassy. She's another kind of Julie Garwood heroine who easily can go up against the alpha hero. And I love that even though she's forced into this new life for herself, she does try to make the best of it. Connor is the revenge-driven hero. He is an idiot, but a lovable one. He is annoying in the beginning, I will say, but he grows on you really easily. He is the kind of hero who thinks that he can control the heroine, but he absolutely can't. He thinks that he can't ever fall in love because that's what made his father weak, but it was so good to see him slowly fall for Brenna and just, you know, all of a sudden wake up and realize that she is the one for him. The romance is fun and sweet. You get to see Connor just grow to adore and worship Brenna. There's also some action here too, like with Connor's quest for revenge. There's some fighting towards the end, and if you are a fan of The Bride, we do get to see a lot of Alec and Jamie in this sequel. It was a fantastic read. I loved it. I had a lot of fun with it. I know a lot of people probably prefer The Bride over this one, but The Wedding is my favorite in this series. For my third and final book, I had a couple options here. I knew I wanted to read Julie Garwood and Lisa Kleypas, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to read for my third author. I debated between Kat Martin, Katherine Anderson, and Amanda Quick, but because I already recently just read Katherine Anderson and Amanda Quick, I decided on Kat Martin. And technically this is the first complete book that I read by Kat Martin. I read another of her historicals, but I kind of just read the second half of the book because of the groveling. So I read Midnight Rider by Kat Martin, and this is her 1996 release, and it's got this beautiful step back. It's a 2-page step back, and there's also some gorgeous embossing on the front cover. So Midnight Rider, I don't know why I'm so surprised by how much I loved it, but it was so good. It's another 5-star read for me. It's a Western historical romance, like a true Western Wild Wild West. It's set in the 1850s California. I thought Kat Martin did an incredible job with creating the setting. It felt so genuine and real. I don't normally read too many Westerns. I definitely don't read a lot in this time period, but it was so easy to read about in here. It's the other kidnapping romance that I read for this video, and it's definitely the darkest of the 3 books. It's about a Spanish hero whose family's land was stolen by the heroine's uncle. Ramon is currently just like a Spanish Don. He's the heroine and her uncle's neighbor, but he is very determined to get back his land, and as a side job, he is also an outlaw. He has this other secret identity known as El Dragon that he shares with his brother, so the both of them, they will go out and steal from the rich in order to give back to their really poor community. And one night when Ramon and his brother and their group of people are out trying to steal some horses from Carly's uncle, Carly catches them, she raises an alarm, and in the midst of all this gunfire and fighting, Ramon's brother is shot and killed. And in revenge, Ramon ends up stealing Carly away. He kidnaps her and is very brutal to her. So the beginning of this book is pretty rough. It reads almost like a dark romance. Ramon treats Carly terribly. He makes her walk barefoot for miles to their secret small town. She does almost die, but she never loses her pride. She's a very strong kind of heroine. He does this though because he wrongly blames Carly for the death of his brother, but thankfully he does come to realize that it's not actually her fault. She didn't actually, you know, shoot his brother and kill him. But the beginning is so intense, and I was like, oh my god, how are they even gonna come back from this? This is crazy. But thankfully, after Ramon got his head out of his ass, he is trying to make up for what he did to her, but obviously she's like, hell no, you were awful to me. I'm not gonna forgive you for that. Carly is still his captive because now she knows that he is El Dragon, the man that the outlaw that her uncle is very determined to kill, and she also knows where his family and his community lives. These two were so great together. I love the fire and the chemistry between them. There's just like all these sparks flying between them. They're not meant to be at all. Like Ramon, he wants to marry some Spanish lady to continue his Spanish bloodline, and Carly, she wants to give back to her uncle who's given her this new life. She wants to be a proper lady to give back to her uncle. They have no plans to be with each other, but there's some fantastic lust between them. The chemistry here is just chef's kiss, and I loved how they both grew to respect each other even though they didn't want to. They were fantastic characters. Ramon is this sensual alpha Spanish hero, and even though he can be really ruthless and brutal, he does try to make up for the hurt that he caused, and there is some groveling towards the end of the book too, which I always appreciate. Carly is so strong and full of pride. The romance between them was freaking amazing. It was angsty and intense. I loved it. There's also a marriage of convenience too, which I didn't expect, but it's there. And there's also a lot of action here too, like action and danger and adventure. It was so much fun to read. There's all these raids, people shooting at each other on horseback. It gets very exciting. And I also got to use some of the 4 years of Spanish that I learned during high school. They speak a little Spanish in this book, so I was like, all right, that's cool. I really don't know why I'm so shocked by how much I loved this book, but it has everything that I love in a romance. There's action and passion, there's steam, and so much angst. You can really feel the love between the characters. The romance was so fantastic. I'm just really happy that I chose chose to go with a Kat Martin historical romance, and I cannot wait to read more from her now. And also, I think just in general, I've become a Western historical romance girl because the ones that I've read, I've loved a lot. Contemporary Westerns are the ones that are hit or miss for me, but the historical Westerns have all been so great. So if anyone has some Western historical romance recommendations or Kat Martin recommendations for me, please let me know. But that's it for my 3 1996 historical romance books, me reading books that were published in the same year that I was born in. I did want to give a shout out to 2 other 1996 books that are top favorites for me. There's Indigo by Beverly Jenkins and Annie's Song by Katherine Anderson. If you haven't read those books, you need to. And now I have 2 other favorites to add to that list. And of course, don't forget to watch all the other romance booktubers videos. I'll link them all down below. I'm really excited to see which books they chose. But that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with these 3 books, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!